Welcome to Women Mastering Midlife, where we dive deep into the rich complexities of womanhood in our middle years. I'm your host, Victoria Byrd, a pharmacist, certified women's health coach, and your guide on this transformative journey. Whether you're navigating perimenopause, thriving in menopause, or mastering midlife's many transitions, this is your weekly dose of expert guidance, compassionate support, and a judgment-free space to explore it all. Here, we're empowering women to master midlife on their terms, reclaiming our health, our happiness, and our power. Together, we'll rewrite the narrative around this remarkable stage of life, from something to dread into a beautiful, bold transition. I'm so glad you're here. Welcome to the Women Mastering Midlife podcast. In today's episode, we are turning up the volume on a conversation that's been a whisper for far too long. I'm joined by filmmaker, musician, and cultural force Alicia J. the creator behind the bold new documentary, Menopunks. This episode is a deep dive into the fire and fury that birthed a movement, a rebellion against 2 decades of misinformation and medical gaslighting rooted in the misrepresented results of the Women's Health Initiative study. We explore the cultural, medical, and creative cost of that damage and how Gen X women and all the people with ovaries are reclaiming their autonomy and rewriting the menopause narrative. Alicia and I unpacked the personal rage that became a catalyst for truth-telling, the generational disempowerment that followed WHI's skewed findings, and why hormonal optimization is about more than symptom relief. It's about power, longevity, and thriving through midlife and beyond. If you've ever felt dismissed, misinformed, or just plain furious about the way our healthcare system has treated menopause, this conversation is for you. Menopunks isn't just a film, it's a cultural reckoning. I binged Instagram and all the socials, and then I went on your website, and it just feels like such a fresh and alive take on it. And even though you hear the stories on the other documentaries of women and their suffering and their experiences, this feels so much more alive to me. Like this is the movement that we need to really just light a flame under a lot of people's backsides to get moving.
Exactly. That's 1,000% what we're going for with Menopunks. Because you know what? I am so mad. And so I think, as I've heard from various people we can talk about, but like the rage is what's going to change this forever. And if we don't have the rage, it's going to continue being Oprah and Tamsin and Halle Berry and Naomi Watts. God bless them all, and Gwyneth. But I don't give a shit. And the problem is, neither does Gen X. And so this is why they're like all trying to sell their things and, put their word out there. But like, we're over it. We've been over it before it began. So the problem is like, how do you really turn the tide on not only a subject that has been taboo and weird and sort of like backwardsly negative forever, but like, how do we change it moving forward, right? And how do we really motivate our generation and the generations who come after us to approach this differently from a completely fresh angle? And I figured out that the rabbit hole is deep, Victoria, but I was like, once I talked to Dr. Robert Langer and Wolf Utian, if you know those names, who are like the ones who really are sort of at the center of the truth of what happened, once I really got a picture of the whole thing, I was like, oh man, Gen X is gonna be pissed.
Yeah.
And more than anything, I started to see from a creative perspective, this is why the movie exists, but I started to see on my own personal level, creatively, how being on bioidentical HRT or just HRT in general completely transformed my life. Like I went from being miserable to being more creative than ever. And then I really started to understand and comprehend the stakes and the cost of what 23 years of systematic disempowerment vis-a-vis removing access and proper information about hormone replacement therapy has done to the United States, to the world, to culture, to politics, to us personally, to our families, to our relationships, to our art, to, the art that we love. So my solution was it really came from a personal place. Like I'm an artist, a multi-hyphenate, all kinds of weird polymath ADHD artist. And I'm in menopause, right? So I was like, I went through it in real time and I was like, why am I having to fight with my doctor over this? This is ridiculous. Like what? And, that was kind of where it began. So thank you for the compliment. I'm glad you're feeling what we're putting out.
I think so. For me, I turned 40. I'm a 1980, so I'm that weird.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
yeah.
am I Gen X? Am I like the Gen X generation kind of shuns us, but the next generation
totally.
is like, you're too old. You're too old to
Yeah.
understand social media and technology. But the Gen Xers are like, no, you're not old enough. So we're kind of in this, I'm in this like weird space where I feel both. I was kind of left to my own devices when I was younger, and you know, we drank from a hose and figured everything out on our own way. But
so did we. Nothing
yeah,
is
so I'm
different. Don't
there.
worry.
I can experience it. We played Red Rover and clotheslined each other in gym class. Nowadays, they're like, we can't do things like that. It's not kind.
I know. We were put through the ringer in a way that, like, I mean, look, you're an elder millennial technically, right? Or you're a very young Gen X. You're like on the cusp. And when I really completely comprehended that menopause really begins at like 35 or younger for some people, it like completely blew my mind. I was like, whoa. I mean, I'm 55. I should just be clear. That's 20 years ago. If I had understood really what was going on with me, not in you can retire from polite society way because you're going to be miserable and just go away from people versus engaging and lose your career and lose all the ground you've gained in your artistic body of work, lose everything because so you can just be sweating into a heap of misery for a decade. If I really understood that it started so young, it would have changed so many things in my life. I mean, I personally I think I got through pretty easy compared to some of my friends, but still it's a game changer, really having the comprehension of not only what is perimenopause and menopause, but like what you can do to relieve your suffering and potentially to like feel better than ever. Like, what? If that was possible?
Yeah.
I didn't know.
Yeah. I think so. For me, I was turning 40 in 2020. So July of 2020.
Wow.
So then, and it didn't start, I had no idea, even with a pharmacist background, I had no idea what the symptoms were going to look like for me. I just thought of the standard, the hot sweats, the night sweats and the hot flashes and the rage and all the lunacy that you see on sitcoms of menopausal women. That was like what I was expecting. My grandma would be like, I got to go change my patch. I'm getting feisty. Like that was all I knew of it. And so for me, it was, I would wake up at 3:00 in the morning every day in a complete and utter panic over things that made no sense. Like, and I've talked to, so Anne Marie McQueen, who runs Hot Flash Inc., she talks about the 3 a.m. doom drops, and that's exactly what it was. It was completely this feeling of, this makes no sense to me. I'm worried about my kid. Like, what if my kid gets cancer right now in the middle of a pandemic?
Oh, God.
Who thinks these things? I know.
Honey, what the hell?
Are we going to have enough money to pay our bills? Knowing full well what our bank account balance is. And we were fine. And so the rationality of my brain was completely gone. I went into those spirals, and then I would wake up soaking wet, throwing sheets off, but I didn't have the red face, fanning myself, hot flash. So I didn't correlate it to anything other. I was like, I'm 40. I'm not old enough for this.
I know. It feels like 40. This is what it is. Yeah. Great. I'm getting old. I made actually a whole web series about that called The Benefits of Gusbandry that literally is about my life turning 40 and sort of everything I was ashamed about, laid bare into a narrative comedy series. I am not in it, thankfully. I did it like a regular comedy show on TV, but I hope you get to watch it because it's literally like before I started feeling any of that, but certainly other things were going on and I hadn't really figured it out. So I think some of that is in there, but I feel you. Look, 40 and 50, I mean, and all of them, 30, 60, yeah. I mean, I feel like there are these huge milestones in our lives that sometimes we sort of expect, the worst. And so when it happens, we're like, of course, instead of trying to figure out, is there like a physiological reason for this?
Yes. Well, and then there's that, it's not that bad. I've talked to my friend and she's got it far worse than me. So I'm just going to tolerate what I have because it's not as bad as so-and-so. And that's malarkey. We should all just not suffer.
I agree. And the other thing I noticed about Gen X that's blowing my mind, and look, a lot of people are like, yes, I'm glad you're talking about this. This has changed my life. Thank God. And some people are like, oh, whoa, huh? What? I thought it gave you cancer. I don't understand. And other people, especially Gen X and people who are a little older, are cranky AF. They are stubborn. They don't want to hear about it. They think they know. They are convinced that like it's going to kill them, or they don't need it because they'd rather just tough it out because it's natural. And look, I get all of that. I respect all of it. And I think everybody should make a decision that is completely their own. I'm not trying to push anything or sell you anything. Well, minus merch, because we're trying to make the movie. So that is happening. And I'm sorry,
yes,
but I don't want to, but I don't want to sell you like a supplement or whatever, or a lifestyle. I just want to like give you the facts and explain to you how this life-saving, quality of life-changing therapy has evolved, and also how we were cheated out of it for over 2 decades, like in a way that is so mind-melting that when I started discovering how deep it went and how bad it really was, I was like, oh God, okay. Like, I know that what we need is rage to turn the tide on this, but like, people are going to be really, really, really mad. It's like a mass violation of women that occurred based on dudes, politics, and money. And really, it should be no surprise that that's what it was. But like, people don't really get it. Like, I've seen all the documentaries, well, not all, but I've seen a lot. Like, let's look at the M Factor, I think is a great one, except they never ask why, right? They talk about how that's not right. And actually HRT is fine, especially bioidentical. Things were sort of sketchy, but then, it kind of came out that it wasn't sketchy. And here we are, we can do it now. Look at these women, they're doing better. Like, it's the things we see and we're like, oh, that's great. Okay, yeah, HRT is probably okay for me. That's what you leave it with, which is good. But what you don't leave with is why you thought it wasn't okay for 23 years. And that to me is the crux of what we're doing with this film, is giving everybody the facts and the information, and then highlighting, illuminating, shining a spotlight on the stage of what it cost. And that, I think, is going to change things, because it's not just, it's misinterpretation or blah, 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 or it's better now, bioidentical. Like, there's a lot of things I think we can kind of like, oh, sure, great. My doctor says now it's okay. They took a seminar. Now they know. Okay, back up. Why did your doctor think it was messed up in the first place? Why are probably 80% of doctors that are in the world misprescribing or non-prescribing, or, and you got to wonder why. So, I mean, man, I am radicalized, Victoria. So like, well, watch out.
We have there's moments in our lives, like, where were you when when the Challenger exploded? Where were you when 9/11 happened? Like, all those things. And for me, it was, what was I doing when I was listening to the audible Estrogen Matters? I was angrily vacuuming. Like, you have got to be kidding me.
Angry cleaning.
I was like, I am getting 10 years of dirt out of this rug because I was so mad. Those people, and the fact that they sped up the releasing the article. And I think it was Time, right? They released a Time article, and they pushed it through, and they didn't tell everybody that was on the panel that they were going to do this, and they were streamlining it. And then all of a sudden, it was just like this mass hysteria, and I was just like, damn you.
It's even worse than that. Here's the thing. Time got involved later, but Time was just doing an article based on what the WHI released to JAMA, right? JAMA is the Journal of American Medicine. So can I give you a tiny bit of a history that
go back.
Because I know
really
too
angry.
much. Because I am clearly an ADHD rabbit holer, punk rock weirdo. Why I'm a filmmaker is because I'm so endlessly curious, and I've been a portrait photographer my whole life, and it all intersects for me. So when I get a bone of what I think is curious or something's piquing my interest, I just want an answer. Like, I'm kind of a life hacker, right? Like, if this can make my life so much better, why isn't everybody else doing it? And like, the answer of the why is real interesting. So basically started the movie thinking I was going to make a film about me and my friends in the rock scene here in Portland and like the amazing, powerful, transformative effects of HRT. And then I thought, oh, well, there's a side of menopause in this film, so I should talk to some menopause specialists, which I did. I talked to some folks I think I talked to Aoife O'Sullivan, and I went to her PDX Menopause Collective's conference here in Portland. And basically, like, everything I thought I knew or I didn't know or didn't think I needed to know, or that I certainly didn't want to know, but now I knew. And they were the ones responsible for fully radicalizing me, because I just was like, what? Wait a second. Like, why doesn't everybody know all of this? And then Aoife, I mean, she's just a powerhouse, and she's a force, and she really, really, really wants to tell people and like radicalize them on the truth. And I was right there for it. I was there for it. I was just like soaking it all in. And I'm such an osmosis learner. I learned by being there. And I did. And so by the end of the the conference, I was just like, wow. And I was filming it, by the way, and taking photos as my other producing partner, Laura, was there. We were just like, holy crap. By the end of it, they had a Q&A, and they were asked, how many doctors are in the audience? And it was like 90% raising their hands. And I was like, wait a minute. It's not just me and the people who are like miserable. It's doctors. Wait a second. Yeah. What does that mean? And then so that sort of led me continually down. I mean, then my first interview with Aoife, which you saw a tiny bit of in the teaser, you know, we talk all about it. And she mentions Dr. Robert Langer and, you know, the people, Jacques Rousseau is his name, the guy who was at the head of WHI. She mentions all these names. And then she has been sending me articles and things. And so I was like, oh my God, what, huh? What happened in 2003? So eventually I basically like looked up the doctors who were involved, one of which, Bob Langer, who was one of the original investigators and researchers on the WHI. And I looked up, I found an article that she had sent me that talked about like that in 2003 results weren't right. You know, there should be an investigation. That guy is named Wolf Utian. He's actually the founder of the North American Menopause Society and the International Menopause Society. And in 1967 got menopause into basically the dictionary. Of course, it was a man, but he's a good guy. He's like a Menopunk dad, so he's cool.
That's fine. He's allowed.
He's allowed. No, he's great. He really is. He's great. Both of them were just, I mean, so generous with their time to talk to me, and I believe are also going to be in the film. So that's incredible. It's going to add a lot of legitimacy and foundation to our claims, which are true. So basically, the quick and dirty is that in 1993, the first big women's health study occurred, the WHI study, which is Women's Health Initiative. For the first time, there was a lot of women being looked at for research where this hadn't happened. All of medical research had happened based on men, including like aspirin. In 1993, the tides were changing. It was Clinton coming into office, you know, whatever, but Clinton coming into office, a lot of women were in Congress, women who were in their 50s, mind you, who are now in their 80s, okay?
Yeah.
So they really pushed for this study. And the WHI study, Women's Health Initiative, was actually a follow-up study to a study called the PEPI study, which Dr. Robert Langer conducted with about, I think, 3,000-ish women who are all perimenopausal age with HRT, which turned out to be like 80 to 90% effective on resolving their symptoms on like an 80 to 95% level. I mean, they were thrilled, and it was like, oh my God, this is incredible. So it started making it into the market at this point, like in the 80s, I think, maybe the 70s at this point, maybe the 80s. I can't remember exactly when that study happened, but started making it into the market. And now by 1993, all these 50-somethings who, you know, like the Menopunks, but not punk at all. I'm just going to be honest. They're like, oh, wow, is this the fountain of youth forever? Like, is this the fountain of youth? And so they got behind this WHI study, and like $1 billion went into it. The funny thing was, it wasn't actually a study about hormone replacement therapy. It was a cardiovascular study that partially, not all, but partially looked at the effects of HRT on cardiovascular health, as well as a few other things. And there was like an estrogen only wing, and estrogen, or it was like an equine estrogen and synthetic progesterone wing, and all these different kind of parts of the study. Well, in 2003, and this is what I'm trying to get to the bottom of, because there's some real backroom shenanigans that went on, but they decided to stop the study early because there was an sort of a non-statistical significant, but still relevant result, which was like some cancer stuff that went down with like a small subset of people in the study who apparently were like pretty old, already were prone to a lot of disease, including heart disease. Like it was like a hot mess. Like these people that had that result were the worst possible candidates for anything. And they did show some increase in breast cancer, probably because they were already going to get it, quite frankly.
Exactly.
But it showed. And so those were in there, and the rest of the results were sort of nil. Remember, this is like women between the ages of 50 and 79, not perimenopausal women. This is women who are already in menopause or were going into menopause or already way past menopause. So for some reason, which we're trying to get to the bottom of, those results by the head of the WHI, this guy Jacques, he pulled those outlying, non-statistically significant results into the front and center of the results of the study, because they stopped the whole study, because of it, out of what Dr. Langer says was an abundance of caution, which I get. They stopped it at least to look at it. But this dude, took those results at that moment and said, okay, it's all done. At least this part of it's done. And we're going to release to the press that this is bad for everybody. HRT, will cause cancer. And it's so interesting because one of the things that Wolf said, the guy who, coined menopause, basically, he said, quote unquote, that this guy wanted to, quote, sink HRT. And he also said that he thought it was criminal and immoral what happened to women. And that another quote, because I've memorized it by now, is that he thought this was, quote, this was, quote, the biggest misdirection in the history of women's health. Mm-hmm. Those are big claims. All of those are big claims. And I'm like, so what happened? And I asked Bob about it, Dr. Langer, also kind of a Menopunk dad. His daughter's 30. He's a musician. He totally gets where we're coming from. And Bob's like, well, we tried to stop it. I was on the original study. Like, I was at the WHI and I was part of it. They took me from the PEPI study and suddenly I'm in the WHI. We were so excited. There's so much going on. And, really the results were kind of nil across the board and they spent $1 billion on it. So I think maybe they were frustrated with the results. I don't know. But basically he said instead of letting the researchers and the investigators write the paper, which is typically what happens in this situation, it was taken by the brass, including this guy, Jacques Rousseau, and they wrote it. And then the WHO had a conference that all the investigators were invited to. And instead of doing the agenda they thought they were going to go through, instead they were presented with the finished paper. And they were like, well, whoa. Wait a second. Do you know what this is going to do? And they're like, well, we don't think, it's fine. And they're like, no. This is all my interpretation. I will make this into a feature film someday. Don't worry. I'm already working on it in my head, at least. But, the researchers were like, you can't do this to women. This is crazy. I mean, and I'll talk about the percentages of women this affected, but he and these 5 to, I don't know how many, 10 investigators, I don't know how many were there, but a bunch of them, they were given 5 hours to make changes. This is the part that's such a, what's the broadcast news or all these thrillers that I see, Meryl Streep in. This is totally a Meryl Streep story, right? But all the researchers they're like, okay, you can make some changes. So they have 5 hours to make these changes and they do it. They rip up their worlds for a moment. They figure it out. They take that paper, they read it, okay, we can do this. This could be a disaster if this goes out. So let's try to reel it back and show that it's actually it's a partial result. It's not the result for everything. Let's do it. So they did all of this. They rush these changes to the publisher, I believe is the publisher. They give it to them and they say, oh, wow, this is great, but why are you even bothering? It's not only already printed, it's in the warehouses. So too late. And they were just crushed. He was crushed. And, Dr. Langer, God bless his soul, the first thing he started out his conversation with me was that he felt the weight of the world and so guilty and angry about this because all he wanted was to help women. And now this thing that was really was set and actually has helped some women along the way really was used as a prop to deny women from hormone therapy for now over 2 decades. It was intentional. And, if you look at the actual, the world at that moment, it's really interesting. I found an article from 1995 that a friend sent me that was the cover of Time magazine. This was the one that said, this is 8 years before those results came out. This is right? That said, the estrogen dilemma or something like that. And it was about how 25% of women at this point were obsessed with HRT and were popping them like candy. It says in the article, it's not, what are we going to do with these women? They're popping them like candy. They could live forever and be healthy. What? They just have to take a pill? Huh? Is this worth it? Is it safe? Is it not? And this was when the fervor about when the PEPI study happened and the fervor about HRT was hitting pop culture and everybody was doing it. And really, if you track feminism and abortion and women's rights and the right to have a credit card, the right to own a home, all of it tracks kind of with HRT and the access. It's so fascinating to me. Yeah. Right. But so in 95, it was oh my God, 25% of women. By 2003, when this WHI results thing hits the press, it was over 40% of women. So can you imagine? This goes out in JAMA, in the Journal of American Medicine, and then it gets picked up by the press. I mean, the press, because this was Congress and WHI saving women's lives. They're all on this drug that could give them cancer. Oh my God, we're doing the world a favor by taking women off this. So, millions upon millions and millions of women were yanked off of HRT, something that was helping them, something that we now know is incredibly preventative for them to live longer lives, something that the UK gives as a preventative. And the frickin' Queen of England died at 96 taking. Like, this is what they took away from us. So,
yeah,
I mean, that was like, whoa. When Bob told me that, I was like, holy, what? Like, there was a chance this could have been different and they just wouldn't let you have it. Like, so that was like, my brain completely melted. And I was like, oh God, this is worse than I thought.
Yeah, I remember. So I started working in retail pharmacy in 96 when I turned 16. And so that was my first job. It's the only job I ever actually, aside from babysitting, pharmacy was it. It's the only paycheck I ever got. And so I remember pre-WHI. And then I remember it just sat on the shelves and expired out. And, and there would be an occasional prescription for prometrium, which is the micronized progesterone, and estradiol tablets. Rarely would see the patches. The Prem Pro, we were just, throwing in the discard bins. And it was just really sad because women were miserable. But they were told that they were being taken care of, right? Like, this is going to save their life.
Gaslit.
But also, what's the quality of life? That's what's so obnoxious about it. Okay, so you're telling me that I may or may not get cancer from something that, actually the research shows I probably won't get cancer from.
Actually, it might even prevent cancer, ironically.
And cardiovascular disease, and metabolic syndrome.
And dementia, mental illness, bone health. Yeah. I mean, Jesus.
I know. And you don't have to be miserable for decades.
No, I know.
That's the thing that's so frustrating. And I think the thing that also, I'm wondering who is driving. There's still that message out there that the people who are talking about hormones are hormone pushers, and the fear mongering behind not being on hormones. And it's like, come on, guys. Who's pushing that narrative?
Well, it's tough, I think, because the influencer zone is so rich with that. And it's really, and like, they have to make a living. So like the monetization of that has sort of turned inside out. And it's really, it's difficult. You know what I mean? Like, again, Gen X and millennials really, like, they don't really trust doctors anymore. And they certainly don't trust influencers for the most part. I mean, believe me, I'm learning and it's getting fed to me, but I'm still like, a grain of salt with everything I listen to and read, because do they write a book? Is it Mary Claire Haver? Like, what are they trying to sell me? Do I put something on my face? Like, I still think most of them are telling the truth, but I think that it's tough for us to accept things from influencers and doctors. That's why I realize that maybe it's better to hear it from your peers, from musicians, because I think that hearing like Corin Tucker, for example, talk about what she experienced, waking up at 3 a.m, feeling worthless, like she had done nothing worthwhile with her life. Corin Tucker, this is a woman who's released 10 albums with Sleater-Kinney, has toured the world, has the voice of like a gospel angel. She's just like, she has been the soundtrack to my life and to so many millions of women and people with ovaries and people in general, men, everybody's lives. Everybody in Gen X, everybody who's a millennial, everybody younger, like, we all love Sleater-Kinney. We all love Heavens to Betsy. We all love what she's done for Riot Grrrl, indie music, for feminism. She's an icon. You know what I mean? And so hearing her or Jody Bliley from Team Dresch or, any of my participants talk about this, it's very relatable. And I think that I'm putting it out there, like, look, everybody is going through this, and it's worse than you think. It's as bad as it is for you or worse than it is for you. And the worst part is that it's not true. Like, we don't have to be, our feelings are true. Our feelings are real, and the symptoms are 100% real, but like, the options for care and what we're presented with as relief or no relief, it's a nightmare out there for all of us. Yeah. It's a nightmare. And so often we are educating our doctors. So I think that like the real root problem, besides all the lies, which we're going to expose the crap out of, the real root problem is that it hasn't changed within the medical establishment. And so we've got this problem where this JAMA freaking article that was totally a work of fiction, complete fiction, basically, minus the stuff that was real about insignificant results that were the actual results of the whole thing. That is still baked into medical education. So women are like, well, how can I believe an influencer? My doctor said this not safe, and they want to put me, if I do it at all, it's the lowest dose for the shortest amount of time, which is absolutely wrong, 100%. I mean, you should start everybody on the lowest dose of anything if they don't, have a contraindication for it. But like that thinking is thinking that basically was sort of progressive thinking like 10 years into after that original study came out is what I discovered. And another thing I just have to say, because this is a big fat rabbit hole I went into the other night, but I found this insane video of Charlie Rose interviewing this guy, a person, Jacques Rousseau. And it's just like, it's horrible because basically it sort of always comes back to how bad it is, though he does mention the insignificant statistical results at some point. If you are not a scientist, you're like, I don't know what he just said. I just heard that he said it was going to maybe cause cancer, so get off it, right? And then the worst part, 3 years later, this is what really sealed the deal. 3 years later, he was named as one of Time's 100 most influential people in 2006, Jacques Rousseau. And it was like, thank God for him and these women in Congress that saved millions of women's lives. And a woman wrote this thing. She's like, ironic that it took a man to change women's lives and to give them this information. But like, and I was like, oh my God, ironic. Like, I can't wait to put that in the film because I'm like, the irony is so rich, like, and disturbing. So now it's in like Time Magazine is writing about how bad, like, we were wrong, Time Magazine says, and this guy deserves a medal for doing this, Time Magazine says. So like, why wouldn't we think it was bad for us? And like at this point, I'm in my 30s. I don't give a shit. I'm just like, I'm like running nightclubs. I'm booking a nightclub called Doug Fur. I'm playing music. I'm like working in the music business, just doing my thing. I'm feeling great. I really didn't start getting symptoms till my mid 40s personally. So like, I'm like, who cares? Like my whole thing about menopause, I was like, I have friends that are 10 years older and basically they're miserable and they disappear for 5 to 10 years. And I was like, well, I don't know what that is, but I guess I should probably prepare for that. Like, maybe that'll never happen to me. It's never going to happen to me. It's like what you think. And then like, that's how it was. Like menopause was known as the thing that kind of forces you to retire from polite society unless somehow you did it better, right? Or you were woman enough and feminine enough and like somehow magically moist enough everywhere that you were just going to skip it and always feel like you were 25. Bullshit, right? But like, right? Wow.
Yeah. Well, and for me, my 30s, I was so masked in birth control pills. Like, that was the answer,
That's right? Of course, me too. Yes. Until I was in my 40s.
I didn't experience anything. I had no idea until I had like crazy weird bleeding while on the pill that I had never had before. And I went into the doctor and she's like, well, we can try another one or you can come off it for a little while. And I was like, I've been reading about this. And, even though I've been on them forever, I really want to try to clean them out of my system. And I became a totally different person. Within 6 months, my whole, I feel like my brainscape changed. And then I started digging into the rabbit hole of birth control and synthetic hormones and what they do to suppress your natural hormone production. And then I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. But when I went in and asked about hormone replacement therapy, it was like, well, you're not in menopause. And like, no shit. Sorry. Excuse me. I'm going to have an explicit. This will give me an explicit for sure. I was
more people will listen to it more than likely because it's not the kids who are really interested in menopause. Let me just be honest.
I know.
It's rock and roll. It's punk rock, Victoria. I mean, come on.
I know. We're going to make menopause sexy. Those 35-year-old men are going to be like, let's talk about menopause.
I'm committed, man. Once they know, like, it's going to happen. I'm rebranding menopause 1,000%. I know how to do this. I'm doing my whole life. But no, I get you. I think that like that experience when we're in our 30s, like I was on birth control till easily my early 40s. I think it was at the age of 40. I decided to go off also because I was on it all throughout the whole time. I never had an IUD, just pills. But I was like, what does my body actually do? Like what, I'm curious. So I started going natural also when I was around 40 and I was like, oh, okay. And honestly, it wasn't so bad. I was like, my cycle's really regular. The PMS is rough, but like for the most part, like I can handle this. This is no big deal, really. So I was psyched about it. But let me tell you, when like 47, 48 started to hit, the things that I really were like, no. This is different. And then by the time I was 52, so I had a really late menopause. Like this year, 55 was my full like first year in menopause in January, where I threw by the way, I'm just going to stick this in, a no more period panty party for me and all my friends I burned all my old underwear and I had them bring me new ones. It was fantastic. We talked about menopause and perimenopause. Everybody should do it. So like I I'm pretty old. I'm like older than most people that go through it. So by 55, now I'm in menopause. I mean, it was really when I was 51, 52, like in maybe the pandemic, 2020, that I really started feeling it. Like I was needing fans and I was melting. And at some point I was doing all the herbs, all the black cohosh, all the ashwagandha, all the tea, all the whatever. And then it just became untenable. I was so miserable, like so covered in sweats and panic, and like my TMJ got worse. My ADHD was exacerbated on this wild level. I was pinging. I was like able to occasionally do things, but I was just struggling. And then I was like, wow, I need to shift this. And that's when I started looking into it and figuring it out. But I was old enough to sort of get it, but not at first. My doctor said the exact same thing to me. I was 50 years old. And my doctor said, well, you still have a period. So let's just wait and see how it progresses. And I was like, what? And so like, that's one of our participants in the film, Kathy, who was in the Thermals and is now in this incredible band named Roseblood, who is the music in the teaser and just so good. It's called We Won't Go Back. Very appropriate song. She's 50 and experiencing that exact same gaslighting, exact same. Mm-hmm. And I don't think the doctor is trying to make her miserable. It's just the doctor has the training to think that it's going to be dangerous for her or it can't be prescribed properly during that phase of life. And what a mess. I mean, she's miserable. Like her energy is low. This is a woman who like bounced on stage like a bunny for an hour and a half every night. It was like an absolute inspiration for the rest of us, being like, oh, Kath in the Thermals, like she's the best bass player. Look at her. She's incredible. How does she even do that? And now she's like, I just wish I had energy, like, should we really be forcing her to suffer for years till she suffered enough to get proper medical care? Like, what is that?
Yeah. I talked with one woman who told me that she finally went to the doctor to talk about hormone therapy. She had done the research. She knew that's what she wanted to discuss. She felt ready for it. And she was told, try breath work and therapy. And she cried in her car. She cried in her car. And it broke my heart to think of this woman sobbing in her car because she finally had the nerve to talk to her doctor in her 10-minute appointment that, she waits a year for. And the answer is go to therapy. I mean,
dude, do you know what industry completely exploded right after they ripped the hormones out of women's cold, desperate hands? Do you know what it was? The thing that made so much money that it really put like even the $1 billion WHI to shame. The cost of hormone replacement therapy paled in the like level of exploitive profit was, honestly, you know what I'm going to say. Mm-hmm. It was like antidepressants.
SSRIs.
SSRIs became a thing. If you remember in the early 2000s, of course, like, we had 9/11, like all this stuff was going on that was super dark, but like that was the era that like antidepressants like Prozac and all this stuff was like everywhere. And so women who were suffering from menopause were getting like overprescribed antidepressants and a million other pills that had gone out of fashion when HRT came on the scene, like benzos. I mean, I'm serious. Like women became heavily prescribed again because the crazy thing about HRT is that it like, okay, women maybe don't know, they don't quite comprehend that like, it's not a nice, sweet, gentle decline for women. Like when you start going into perimenopause, you're going like that. Mm-hmm. And then when you get into menopause, you're like this into group all the way down.
Flatline.
You flatline, never to be raising that line again. Nature can't do it. Nothing, no herb, no beverage, no Oprah can do anything, like nothing. Yes. And so like you're screwed. And yes, you can tough it out and your body will get over it. But what your body actually does is compensate for not having it. It doesn't get over it. So your body works around estrogen or estradiol and progesterone. Estradiol, and you see I've done my research because I'm radicalized now, but estradiol and progesterone and testosterone are the three sort of building blocks of like virtually every single cell of your body. So when you lose what I like to think of as the cushion for life and the sort of the regenerative element of your cells on some level, your body is just kind of screwed. I mean, you're sort of fucked since we've got the explicit warning.
We already got it. It's fine.
So I mean, like the thing, it's really sad. It's super sad. Like your body can work around not having it 100%. And certainly if you can't have it because you have cancer or other things, there are really some great drugs out there that are helpful and really can get you through the hot flashes. And, sometimes they can help with things like osteoporosis, but like estradiol is the only thing that can be prescribed to prevent or reverse osteopenia and osteoporosis. Like, do women really understand that? Like, this is a preventative, not just a relief thing. Like, So the preventative element, like that's one of our subjects, Jody Bliley from Team Dresch and Hazel. Jody's incredible, right? Like trans mask lesbian, incredible musician, just amazing, and has her and her wife, who had the BRCA gene, have had like hormones forever, but they've just been stashing them for the trans community because they were afraid to take them. Right? Like that's wild. They had them in the house when I did the interview. I'm like, what? And her poor wife, like who is the most amazing person, like she had osteopenia. She's like, what do I do? And so I was like, put on a patch. And so after our 3-hour long conversation, me and Jody, in fact, that night she put on a patch. And then she went to her doctor 2 weeks after, and the doctor's like, thank God, with this and other things, like, we're going to turn this around for you. I've been wanting you to do this forever. And she's like, I feel so much better. So I was like, oh my God, like if we can help even like one person by being here today, or other people just like start to get some accurate information so they can understand, they can gain like potentially like, 3 to 10 years of life and be protected against 23% against cancer, 50% against osteoporosis and osteopenia. Dementia is a woman's disease. They're saying now that it's like a middle-aged disease. Well, what does that mean? Oh, so more women than men get dementia, but it really starts in middle age. What happens to women in middle age that doesn't happen to men?
Exactly.
It's menopause, perimenopause. Yes. So suddenly in middle age, like it gets in you, and your brain is affected by the estrogen deficiency and the progesterone deficiency, and testosterone deficiency, and it starts drying up, and starts like those neural pathways start to just fade because they're not sparking like they would with regenerative energy that your hormones provide. So like, if you were prone, I think within your family hereditarily to dementia, you could be very well heading toward it, because in your 60s and 70s, that stuff that starts in your 40s and 50s, when you start losing that hormone, it really comes to fruition, and you really start seeing, like, you start losing it when your body is sort of trying to work around it, basically. All that, it all makes sense biologically.
If you're navigating the maze of perimenopause and wondering, is this normal? You're not alone. My free guide, Menopause Science and Symptoms, breaks down what's happening in your body and why. It's your roadmap to understanding the changes and embracing this phase with confidence. Download it now at missvictoriabyrd.com/free guides and take the first step toward empowered wellness. You'll also find the link in our show notes below. Be sure to sign up and grab that free guide. I was talking with Dr. Voskuhl. She's out at UCLA, and she was studying MS, but she was finding that pregnant women, because their bodies produce estriol during pregnancy, they were having less symptoms of MS. And then they were also having their brain scans were looking better, and their brains were healing. Mm-hmm. And then when they were done with pregnancy postpartum, all of that would come back, and they were seeing the same thing in menopause. So she's actually doing studies on estriol for cognitive health in women in menopause, because
estriol or estradiol? Because it's
estriol, actually. It's a different
I'd be curious to know why estriol.
Yeah, because, apparently it attaches to the estrogen beta receptors instead of the estrogen alpha receptors. Oh. So you don't have, it's more effective in the brain. It's not as much for hot flashes, but it works in the brain more. And also, what else did she say? Oh, it doesn't attach to the breast receptors.
Oh, so if you're like estrogen positive receptor breast cancer, you could take estriol, but not estradiol?
I think she's not touching that yet, but there's still research out there. Yeah. But the thing that's so fascinating is, she's saying memory care centers are 75% full of women.
Oh,
and
it's
so
all
we're
women.
Clearly,
yep.
We're clearly missing the mark in memory care and dementia and Alzheimer's. And so that's frustrating. But to go back to what you were talking about with bodies coming off of estrogen, I try to tell women, if you visualize a factory and you see like the machines like pumping out things, and all of a sudden they stop and the dust puff comes, like the puff cloud of the factory shutting down. That's pretty much effectively what happens to your body. And I think every woman has tried to like detox from sugar at one point in their life.
God,
I'm giving up sugar. And those 3 days are hellacious, and your body is trying to figure out how to get sugar. It's the same exact thing with estrogen, but you just can't connect that because we weren't taught how estrogen affects our body like sugar does or other things. So when talking with women, when that light bulb goes on, they're like, wait a minute, maybe I should look into estrogen. And it isn't for everybody. And there are people who try it and it doesn't make them feel great. Yeah. And that's fine. And I just think giving everybody access to the information is so important. And
Well,
I think that that's what
sorry,
you're doing, right? Oh, no, that's okay.
No, exactly. I mean, that's the thing, right? I am not pushing, whatever. People can do what they want to do. I can tell you my experience. And the cool thing is, I think the thing that I'm excited about, one of the things I'm excited about with the film is that, we're sending everybody, all of our participants, especially 3 though, we're sending them to the doctor. And and Aoife is going to be seeing them, not on screen, but seeing them within the context of the film. And we're going to be doing debriefs with the participants after seeing Aoife and like get their experiences as they're going along, as they get hormonally optimized, right? As they achieve that, if they choose to do it, we're giving them that choice too. The key is just education and them having access to somebody who is, pro menopause or like pro woman or pro pro truth about HRT versus like, screwed from the start, right? So they get to go to a menopause specialist who really has a deep understanding versus their GP who is, just like shrouded in disinformation. So that's part of what we're doing. We're basically like sending them to the doctor on behalf of the film, and then we will hear from them as to what they've experienced and what they're going to do and how that affects them, not only physically, but also creatively, personally. Like, will Kathy have more energy to make music and feel better about gardening or whatever, like, writing songs, or she's an accountant on the side doing her work. Like, will she want to tour again? I mean, you got to think about like, women who are super dynamic, creative, regardless of whether or not they have children, but because a lot of my musician friends, almost all of them do, they are fiercely, passionately creative. They have been since they were in their teens and 20s. I mean, I've known them all of them since the early 90s, like all of them, like they, in different contexts. They played my venue. They worked for me when I ran a distribution company. I was a fan. All of these women I've known for over 30 years. And we were all this way 30 years ago too, right? So like, what I am realizing now, specifically my experience as a musician, because I'm in a band called Party Witch, and my bandmate also is in menopause, right? Like we went through this together as a band. I went first kind of, and then she sort of went after me. And it was like, I was miserable, couldn't deal. And then she was miserable, couldn't deal. We both dealt, we got prescribed HRT after fighting for it. And then we were like, holy shit. We can do this now so much better. And I was able to my quality of life was so much better. And my quality of creative output suddenly started getting better. And I was able to feel more comfortable in my own skin and more confident in my skill set creatively as a filmmaker, as a writer. Like the 55 years of experience I had on this planet was worth something now versus like something that in my potentially strongest era was going to be diminished by my lack of access to something that could let me find it again. Right. Like, so I felt the charge of like, holy crap, wait a second. This is really good. And that's what led me into the like thing of like, oh, okay, this is why they're like, what will we do about all these women popping in like candy? These women, these uppity women. I mean, really, like, that's what we're dealing with is uppity women. Like, us having a voice and us having, agency within this shit show of a world we're living in right now. And I don't think I'm mincing words. We're all going to suffer.
No, it's a dumpster fire.
It's a dumpster fire. We are suffering now. We're going to suffer more. Nobody is safe. And you look at who is in charge and who we didn't vote in, and also how screwed up that was. And why aren't there any, it's like, there's just so many questions. Why aren't there perimenopausal women in that flow? There's like a whole bunch of women missing between the ages of like 40 and like 60. It's kind of crazy. Yeah. And so like, I'm like, just, thinking on my own, tripping on this, being like, putting the pieces together. I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. So after I got radicalized, specifically by PDX Menopause Collective, I'm like, this feels conveniently tied to like the attack on gender affirming care for trans folk who do not deserve to be the only bearers of that, right? Mm-hmm. It also feels like, the attack on abortion and bodily autonomy, all these things that the creepy Project 2020 hellhole is trying to do. All of it ties into control of our bodies, control of our wills, control of our everything. Because if you take away the things that allow us to have autonomy and quality of life, frankly, you disempower us. And what I think Gen X and everybody else, including my mom, who's already pissed because she knows everything now, she's in her 80s, but like what I think everybody is going to feel like when they really understand how they were violated by this big load of bullshit, I mean, I think this could change things really significantly, because one of the things that Bob said at the beginning, he was like, I don't know how you're going to do this. The narrative of breast cancer causing cancer is bigger than any one article or any one thing anyone's ever been able to do. And I'm like, challenge accepted. I feel like, I know I'm not just, but I'm optimized, motherfuckers. Let's go. I'm ready for the fight. You can bleep me on that. I know some people.
Oh no, it's totally fine. I'm thinking of myself like a month after wearing a patch every week. It's like, oh, look out. I'm coming.
So what happens?
Taking away my rights.
What happens if we all start feeling like this? If it's 1995 again?
Oh yeah,
right.
I know.
30 years later, what if we find that moment again? But this time we are like armed with the information, with far more female providers and like a giant, maybe 2 generations of doctors. Well, certainly one generation of doctors right now, Gen X, who's going through menopause and perimenopause and asking the questions for themselves, because they are like, I read the report and that is not what it said. What the hell? Because the report itself is really not terrible. Like, if parts of it tell the truth about things, but the interpretation of the results is what really screwed us all. And the quote unquote wanting to sink HRT to ultimately control women's quality of life so that they would be less of a part of like active society, to me, really like creepily and horribly and depressingly explains the moment that we're in. And I guess that is kind of why I wanted to make the film, because this is my second feature. I've been teaching school for high school filmmaking for the last year, and I gave them the assignment that I took, which was, let's make a film with activism and advocacy at the core. And they all took the assignment, and some of them did it, some of them didn't, but it like stuck in my head. And as I was like playing rock shows and like writing new songs and having like the most amazing time of my life at a time I thought was going to be the exact opposite, I was like, well, maybe that's the film I want to do, because making a rom-com doesn't really sound that much fun right now. Like, who am I going to get money for that? How am I going to find support for that? Like, maybe it's feminist, Gen X hormone replacement rom-com, but still, like, that would be a genre. That would be a genre at some point.
I keep looking for books. There are some books out there that I'm like, oh, this is good. Like the midlife. There's a couple that I've recently read about midlife women and the hormones and all the things. And as soon as they start getting hormone therapy on board and really recognizing who they're becoming, the character arc is amazing for women who experience it. But it's like, so we have the right to get, this is the conspiracy that I'm digging into, like that you've got me like, now I'm going to lay in bed tonight. Like, oh,
girl, I'm so radicalized. Real. I mean, you are already radicalized, but when you really get into the deep of it, you're like,
so fired up. I know.
Well, I'm so sad. Like, I've cried about this to myself, just thinking about all the women that died. I mean, millions of women died. Like, it's not a minor thing of quality of life is not minor, but we're talking about beyond quality of life, right? Like, this is quality of life plus death, plus suffering and continual suffering and death.
Yeah, because it's chronic disease, but it was also mental health. I mean, women were killing themselves in menopause because they're so miserable. There's no answer. There's no relief. They don't think there's ever going to be an end. So that, like, they've made the choice to no longer exist. And but it's like, so they couldn't keep us from getting loans and credit cards anymore.
Right, because feminism and hormone therapy did that for us the first time. You got to think about it. If 40% of women were optimized by 2003, think about like the right to get your own bank account. That was in the 80s, I think. The right to own a home was maybe also in the 80s. This all ties together. Like, it really does. Like, I watched the Ms. Magazine documentary last night, highly recommended. And they're like, well, we started this magazine because nobody was talking about this stuff. Like, women wanted to talk about sexism and, having a family and having a job. And at this time, they were having access also to HRT. And they never mentioned this in the Ms. Magazine, but they're like, it turned into so much more than a magazine. It turned into a movement. And it did. It turned into the feminist movement. And women were strong, and it was terrifying for men. You remember, until it became normal, it was terrifying. And one of the things they talked about is like, all our women friends, like, were like, yes, we're going to raise a generation of, feminist, sweet, soft men. But she's like, then I meet all my friends' kids. And actually, like, they were so afraid of feminism on some level in their relationships that they actually raised 50s kids again. So I feel like who we're dealing with now, all the dick farts in everywhere, like, all of them are kind of like regressive, like 50s era Mad Men idiots who think that like all this trad wife bullshit is like the deal, and that like restricting women to being like only a product of their husband is the way it should be. I mean, really at all, like look at it. If you zoom out for a second, I mean, I obviously like, I mean, I don't know why I'm asking these questions and why I personally am in this situation, because it seems preposterous to me that musicians should be doing this work. But like, if you zoom
somebody
out,
has to. Come on.
I mean, somebody has to. But I'm like, if you zoom out to me, like, because I'm just trying to understand, how did this happen? Like, come on, like we're so close to so much good so many times. I mean, debatable good. Some of the candidates were not who I wish they were, but again, we've been steeped in a horrible political system forever, and I agree that it doesn't work. So all of that, but like, if you zoom out, like it's all connected, in my opinion. I mean, you take away quality of life changing and saving medication that matches, for the most part, what is in your body that will not kill you at all. In fact, you could take till you die. Do you think it's going to have an effect on culture and the world and politics? When you look at other countries like Finland or the UK, when women have been in power, guess what has also been freely accessible? HRT.
Yeah. I feel like we were raised in a generation that we were told as women, you could do anything, you can be anything, you can have it all. You can be a CEO and a mom and PTA president and fly to the moon, but they never told our male counterparts to make room for us. They never taught them to share half the workload at home and the mental load and all the things. And so we have the Mad Men husbands with the women who were brought up thinking
with the Gloria Steinem wives.
Yeah, exactly.
Don Draper and Gloria Steinem, the weirdest odd couple in the world. Can you imagine? I want that TV show. I want to write that thing. That sounds like fun.
Oh my God, that would be amazing.
But it really kind of makes sense. You look at I mean, I don't want to say any of their names, but all these jerks who are all like pushing trad wife in Congress, like they're pushing this.
I know.
And the whole Project 2025, which is 1,000% trad wife. Like you look at that and it really, again, it ties back to the ideal of women being in the kitchen and not in the workforce. But then war happens and oops, all the men die. So you've got to elevate the women to worker status. And then you give them hormones and birth control and abortion because they're working. And it's like the 60s, the 70s was heady because of that, right? You think about why and how, but they found a way to hurt us. They did. They just found a way. They took our HRT away. They took 40% of women within that age range, or from probably 35 to 100. They took everybody's hormones away, including any trans folk, anybody at that point, right? It changed. It started evolving, and trans healthcare started evolving. But for women, even up till now, it's like, it's a mug's game. You just don't know what you're going to get. You're putting a quarter into the machine, you're clicking the thing, and maybe you'll get a doctor who's going to be cool, maybe not. But it is intentional. And them trying to drag us back is 1,000% on purpose. Look, they don't want us to be as strong as we are because, look, if we can optimize till we die, if we can not be falling apart when we fall over, and we cannot be losing our minds because our brains are shriveling up into raisins, if we can actually take all the brilliance and power and beauty and hilarity and experience, everything, if we can take everything that we've gained and actually put it to use for real and have the energy to access it and like the health of mind and body to really thrive during it, do you think that would maybe shift things just a little?
Just a smidge.
I mean, a fuck ton is what it would change. A fuck ton. So look, I will push this. Like, this is now my life. I have nothing. I mean, it's all my credit cards. So it's psychotic. And I really hope people will help and buy the t-shirts or donate tax deductible, whatever they can do can help, because right now we are just doing this as completely independent filmmakers. And for me personally, it is obviously a mission. And for my team, my executive producer, Jonna, my producer, Jody, Laura, Jackie, all of my participants, everybody, like, nobody's doing this just for fun. You know what I mean? Like, we're doing this because we get it and we see it and we want it to change. And we realize that there's nothing that's going to change unless we find a way to do it that enters pop culture in like a zeitgeisty, no fucks given kind of way. And that, fortunately, is something I know how to do.
Which is perfect. It's exactly what this movement needs, because I feel like there are a lot of people in this space that are still trudging nicely. They're still making nice.
Yeah.
And and I think it is because they're worried about their bottom line, their product name. And that's part of the reason why make no money is because I can't take on sponsors that I don't believe in, and I don't want to push a product that I don't use myself, and I don't want to make a product to sell people because it won't. My whole theory of everything is yes and or yes but. Like there's no definitives for any one person, and so it makes it difficult when you have people who have other people behind them pushing a narrative, because they kind of get to control the narrative. And so you guys are controlling your narrative.
We are 1,000%. And I mean, I think about this a lot because you think about all of that, and big pharma is obviously a huge player in all of this.
Sorry.
I mean, I'm sure, I don't know to what degree, but 1,000% they were funding those Congress people who said the things. And I'm sure part of that money went into WHO, which I think actually was for sure funded by, I can't remember the name of the company, but a company hugely funded that. Like this wasn't just taxpayer money, it was also big pharma money.
Yeah, I wonder. I don't want to say what I think it is without knowing, but
it's something with a D, but I can't remember. I have it in an interview somewhere. But like all of that, there's funding from big pharma. They make so much more money of us not being optimized because, hormonal optimization, especially bioidentical, is really cheap. It's super cheap. It's like $15 a month or less, or maybe a little more if you're not covered. But like even when it's even out of pocket, like I just got testosterone gel, which is of course prescribed off label and I had to fight for and get tested and all this shit.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I love it. Let me just be honest. I rubbed some
you
on
and your
my
controlled
leg.
substance junkie. I see you.
You have no idea. I've always been an early adopter. This is nothing new. But like, all of those things, it's a huge difference. Like if you're able to access HRT for cheap as like a generic thing versus the gazillions of billions of drugs and dollars that are exploiting women's misery and making industries that have become so gigantic that the idea of toppling them is why we're being disempowered.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
It's all just money.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about all of the chronic diseases that could be prevented with hormone therapy being on board early. So you're getting a patch and you're getting maybe a gel and a capsule versus cholesterol meds, SSRI,
blood
you got a benzo on there, you got your blood pressure medication, you got your diabetes medication. I mean, it's a whole lunch sack full of meds.
Not to mention all the stuff that's not even meds. That's like the other things that you do to try to feel better, the juice crazes or the supplements, which, some of these influencers, for better or for worse, that's what they're pushing. And it's like, I get it. You got to make a living, but like, ew. You know what I mean? Because if the truth, and that they're not ever asking why or trying to expose the actual truth. Like they talk about how, yes, it's okay. We have new things and it's better, and don't listen to that. I appreciate that. And thank God for some of them, because that's how I got here in the first place, really. But like the deeper story is really what we need to be talking about, because this is a violation. I'll say it again. Women were cheated out of, at least 23 years of absolute life-changing, quality of life saving, bioidentical, natural, fucking natural, therapy for it. What the hell? Like, that's nuts. So look, I am, it's a bet. It's a big bet. And just like you start any business as a small business person, because to me, Menopunks is a small business, because it is. I had to get an LLC. You make a movie, it's ostensibly a small business, but like, I am, putting everything I can into my new little small business, because I really believe that with this film, we can get into that zeitgeist. I know how. I've been making photos for bands and music videos and films for 30 years. I've been selling tickets to shows for 30 years. I've been selling records to record stores I got, the first Pink Martini album into Starbucks. You know what I mean? Like crazy shit is in my history.
Yeah, wow.
I have weird platinum records in my office. Do you know what I mean?
You've gotten it done. Yeah.
Well, more than anything, I found a way for many different artists specifically to enter the zeitgeist in a way that's memorable and that has to some degree changed the conversation for them, right? Like an artist will hire me, like I'll give you the example of the Decemberists. You might know who they are, the band The Decemberists. You know them?
Okay.
So okay, damn it. Well, we'll just.
I'm
just
sorry.
Say,
I'll listen. I will go listen.
Of course, and then they can edit it like you.
Yes,
I love Colin Malloy. Colin Malloy's
Okay.
amazing. Okay, anyway.
Yeah.
So, but they're just an example of many bands
Okay.
I've done this with. But I worked with them at the beginning because their music was so great, but their photos were so terrible. At least in my opinion, they were fine, but I was like, booking nightclubs and trying to sell records, and I'm like, you need better photos. Let me take photos, and then very quickly that evolved to 10 more photo shoots over the years, because we would sort of created a narrative for the band through the imagery. And that ultimately sort of gave them a foothold and helped create the narrative for their entire trajectory as a band into what's now a legacy band, right? And I've done that many times with many different kinds of artists and chefs. And a photo that's you can see back there with Woman and Pig, Naomi, God bless her soul, she's passed. But that photo wound up in Elle magazine, full page. It's her and a dead pig, right, that she was going to cook. But it got looked at, it's multi-contextual, right? Like, is she holding a pig like a baby because it's her pet? Or no, she's a chef. And that pig is actually it's about her reverence to her ingredients, right? And to the process of a pig becoming her ingredient, right? The photo, that's a Decemberist photo in the middle. That's one of from the series. And then that one over there, I can't do it, is a band called Phenomena. And that's all them together in a bathtub, taking a bath together, shaving each other's legs. And we use that as their fan photo because they were like this wildly irreverent, very unique original band. And I was like, are you willing to do this? And they're like, yeah. So it really reflected their sense of humor. So like my thing is as an artist is to like sort of synthesize the artist's intention with my intention as a visionary, visual creator, or storyteller with like, beauty and like a way to sort of make it happen that's aesthetically really compelling, right? But it's like emotional, it's psychological, and ultimately it leaves with people feeling like they've been like they've gotten a little about the artist personally and also narratively through just a single image. That's what brought me into making film, right? I was like, I want to make it move. And so I did. And then that brought me into this. But it really is all about like finding a way to communicate emotionally, with people on the broadest level. And I mean, luckily, like that's what I've been doing for 30 years. This moment in time, the stakes are so high for our kids. I have a 16-year-old, you have a 16-year-old, we have kids in this, younger kids. All my friends have kids. Most of the women in this film have kids. Like everybody, like for the like not everyone, but most of us, like 80% of everybody does. And it's just like, holy Jesus, like, how do we, in good faith, leave this world to those beautiful kids, these wonderful gender neutral, accepting human beings that we are certainly not raising mad motherfuckers anymore. We are beautiful indigo children who are going to make the world a better place, but they deserve the world as a better place right now. So
exactly.
That is why we're making Menopunks, I think, to get the word out to a generation that's too stubborn to listen to Oprah. I mean, Oprah's also not, she's not asking why. She's talking about something and selling you like she's never asking why. Like Gen X, Gen X really, like we understood sexual assault, right? Like we started, Me Too is definitely Gen X millennial thing. Like, these are all things like, what if, I posed this question, two things, like what if, what if we were truly denied this? Like, what if a crime was committed on purpose to deny us, number one, right? And then counter that with, okay, what if it was a crime? What if we got screwed? But then what would happen if all people, definitely, and especially women and people with ovaries, were hormonally optimized? What would happen? And in every conversation, I'll do a separate teaser for this because the answers are just amazing. You get a little taste of it with Jody at the beginning of the piece and later in the piece and the teaser. But like, it's a question you have to think about. If everybody, if all women, if all people with ovaries were hormonally optimized, how would that change the world? What do you think, Vic?
Oh God. I mean, we would definitely be living in a better place. Like, I think, in talking with my 14 and 16-year-old and their friends, just the level of openness and understanding of the world and seeing it through their eyes has been eye-opening to myself and saying like, wow, they have such an ability to change the trajectory of humankind. And we need to give them the platform and keep them from getting jaded along the way, right? Because there's so many times you see little kids, the innocence of youth then gets tarnished by the time they're our age. And so my goal is to prevent that, but also make a place for them that they don't have to advocate. I don't have a conversation. They're talking to someone like me, and it's not how many doctors did you have to see before you were given the options. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want that to be their conversation when they're 30, 40, 50. And so that's my mission.
Yeah, we're all going to do it together. We can do it. If I could help make Portland like an official tour stop on really fancy bands tour itineraries, by booking really good shows and creating consistency within the context of live music, because that's what I really worked to do when I was the booker at Doug Fur here in Portland. That was the same kind of thing in a much smaller way, but it was like nobody was stopping in Portland, right? Like nobody was coming here, but the scene was so great and the clubs were so great, but like there was just no consistency in messaging, right? It's kind of the same thing. I feel like the problem now is there's just no consistency. So I think that this wave of Gen X and millennial truth tellers and advocates, which you are one of and I am one of, I think we have a real opportunity to shift this narrative back to the actual truth and away from the trad wife, demonization of, God forbid, bodily autonomy and human rights.
Oh, shucks. I want to be able to do what I want with my own body. Oh,
I mean, if they can own us, why can't we own them? Does that get us to a slippery slope? Like, do I get to own my husband and I'm getting married in a month? Should I wait to sign the papers till I can own him? No, he would not go for that. Nor would I go for that. Do you know what I mean? Like, I have never wanted to necessarily, like, the idea of marriage was always very confusing to me, but I'm actually literally getting married for the first time in a month, in August.
That's awesome.
And I'm just like, whoa. But it's, I'm going into it with my eyes completely open, with somebody who raised his child on his own because he's a widower, and, and my 16-year-old is my future stepson, right? Like, and we're making a new family by choice with complete understanding of what we are capable of. And the gender dynamic of what we thought is very reversed and different in our relationship. It's based on who we are as humans and what we can do, not what the gender binary tells us we can do, right? That I can buy off on and that I can marry, But I still will not change my name, and there's lots of things. But, medical reasons really put us in this position where we're like, whoa. We need to have full responsibility for each other in that situation. So,
Yeah, there's still some traditional rules at play for non-traditional relationships.
So far, though, I thank God for marriage equality. That gave so many more people, autonomy and rights in the context of their familial relationships. My best friend is an attorney who advocated for that even before it went nationwide, and we got marriage equality a year early. Shout out to my dear husband, Lake Paraguay. But it takes strong, fierce, fearless advocates who really have no fucks left to give, are not being lobbied by big pharma, have nothing at stake in terms of products or whatever, and just want to get the word out. That's worth trusting. You know what I mean? Like, I can trust that. I feel like musicians, okay, who does Gen X trust more than doctors? Musicians. I mean, it's just true. I hate to say it, but why would they lie? Where I feel like doctors, sometimes they don't even know that they're lying, and that's the worst part,
Yeah. Yeah. It's just the narrative they were spoon-fed. And we didn't even learn. I graduated pharmacy school in 2004. We weren't even taught menopause. I mean, it was, somebody might have a Prempro pack on their list of prescriptions, but it was never a conversation of the actual menopause transition. We talked about the cardiovascular disease, the high cholesterol, the high blood pressure, all those things, but it was never correlated down to a transition in life and what that meant. So definitely, it's my thing. I was talking with Aoife and the rest of the Dusty Muffins on their podcast.
Love them.
And
love them so much.
We started getting into the pharmacist and how they can be the stopgap in care. Like, once you finally get your prescription, then you get to the pharmacy and they're like, well, this might give you a stroke, so we can't fill this prescription. And then there's like this whole thing. I know. So I want to educate pharmacists. I want to make it mandatory for pharmacists to have continuing education in every state. When I got licensed, I had to do death with dignity, and I was licensed in Oregon for several years. I had to do death with dignity continuing education. In Washington State, I had to do HIV and AIDS education. So there are requirements in order to maintain your license every year. And so if you're going to require those things, why can't we do 1 to 2 hours of continuing education for every licensed pharmacist on menopause? Why is that not okay?
I mean, it's such a idea that, like, of course,
it's an hour of your year.
I mean, it really is preposterous that we're fighting for an hour. I mean, it's ridiculous, right? But luckily, a lot of women who got into pharmaceutical science are now of menopausal age. Yeah. So that is shifting too, which is ironic, right? But it all has to change, like, I think at once and one step at a time, right? Like, I think that, like, getting this into the zeitgeist really as a conversation that must be had by all of us right now, I hope will lead us to new legislation, and new laws and new levels of care. I mean, right now we are in what would be, I would consider to be the like the pullback, the regression of the slingshot of history, where they're trying to show us just how bad it was and can be if dipshits who want to control women will run everything. If they ever wanted us to know how bad it could be, well, we're finding out real fast. You know what I mean? Okie dokie. We thought everything was sewn up. We had abortion, we had rights, we had, checkbooks, for God's sake. We had HRT, we had it all, but no.
Yeah.
Now, on top of how it's like insult to injury, you take away women's like life force. And then on top of that, you try to pull them back and pull everything that gives them autonomy back. Like, look, the result for them is not going to be pretty. Like, it's not just going to be the oops, step away. It's going to be a fucking bitch slap across the face and a kick to the fucking groin. And that is how we go to the front of the pit. Do you know what I mean? I mean, well, if you're in a bikini kill show, there's no dicks and you're at the front anyway. But like, I'm just saying it's going to take, like a lot of women radicalizing, just like they did as radical feminism, really like feminist radicalization happened. Why not hormonal radicalization? I feel like that is what has happened to me. That is what has happened to you. Once we started to really understand not only the effects of HRT, but the history, it can't leave you. It leaves you nowhere but like a fucking jaw drop, holy shit moment of like, I want that. And I think that Gen X is a very give me what she's having kind of generation. Yeah. And not from like an Oprah perspective, but a modeling perspective. When you see, somebody just killing it, you're like, how does Kim Gordon do it? I want to know Sonic Youth, like, I want to be her. Like, I want to have that energy and be fucking killing it at 71 or 72. Like, we see that, we want it. We all want to wear what, Patti Smith, we want the Patti Smith style or whatever the artists or the people that we love. We're like, we're not necessarily basing it on, not all of us are basing it on fashion models. We're basing it on people who, model that behavior and model that fashion in our day-to-day lives. And I think that is the most powerful way of communication. So that's what we're doing. And I think that Menopunks, like, Gwyneth Paltrow asked for a menopause rebrand in some little sniglet I got on my feed, like, what we need is a menopause rebrand. That's my Gwyneth Paltrow impression. It's terrible, but you know what? Again, challenge accepted, Gwyneth, because you could never come up with Menopunks. She is not punk at all. She married the guy from fucking Coldplay. They're divorced, but everybody knows Coldplay is the literal opposite of punk. No offense, they seem like nice guys, all of that, whatever, but Coldplay. So like, this is a rebrand. I mean, if I didn't have hundreds of women, thousands of people suddenly like flooding our Instagram in the last 2 weeks, like this is what's gone on. Sleater Kinney, awesome. Corin's band, shared the video as a co-post and photos as a collaborated post. And suddenly we've been rocketed into the like stream of existence when we literally came into being on March 15th. And now less than 20 years, it feels like 120 years, less than 120 days later, like I have women contacting me and people with ovaries every single day signing up on our mailing list, being like, thank you, love. One woman wrote, she's like, I'm 72 and I'm so happy for what you're doing because I was on HRT that I went off for 1 year because I couldn't afford it. And then I tried to go back on when I finally had the money and I've never been able to catch myself back up. There was so much damage to my body in that year that even going back to where I was, it could never happen. I aged so much in 1 year. So like, they're self-identifying as Menopunks. It's as if like, I mean, look, I'm like an ADHD, needleistic, nerdy accordion player, cat lover, dahlia grower, musician in Portland. I am not like in any way like famous, influency, anything. I'm literally like, I'm just not. I'm just a regular person, right? That has a manic creative brain, right? But like, it's so preposterous that we can be at this moment and sort of have the opportunity to like sort of unlock the door for a whole generation through just the simple fact of like revealing the truth about what happened. It's not a mystery. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Like it's not, and I really want help for my friends who've had breast cancer. You know what I mean? Or my friends who've had breast cancer in the family who are afraid. And I have another musician friend who's in her early 50s who recently did have, she's like a legend of like the early 90s indie scene. And I would love for her to be in this movie. And she may well be as a participant that can't get HRT or has been told she can't because of her cancer. What do we do about that? What's the result there? And even if she knows the truth about all of it, how does that affect her? And what does that mean? What does that mean for people who, have been told no for other reasons or think they're not a candidate. And that's such a pervasive myth as well. So, there's just so much we need to learn. But I just am advocating for the learning and for the understanding of the actual truth and the history of it. And so that people can have the right to knowledge and to advocate, to learn how to advocate for themselves and to, feel confident about getting what they need to have the quality of life that they deserve. Because why should we get anything less than the dude who gets pushed Viagra or like free hormone tests by whatever, and then, slathered with 8 kinds of testosterone and 12 kinds of Viagra for free for $5? Like, dude, these guys have it set. They are ready to like screw their way to infamy with 25 children from 30 different women. That doesn't make sense, but you know what I mean? Like, what is that about? You know what I mean? Like, it's just creepy. This moment of like birth money, but they don't want to support the kids. Like, it's just so counterintuitive to everything that we know as women, right? Like, yeah. But I'll say this. This is, I don't know. This is probably, maybe I'll regret saying this, but you can put it in the podcast. Like, I think about changing the world from the context of what we can all do, right? Like, and I think about politics and how hopeless it seems, right? It really does. And I think about the last election, and even within the scope of that, how hopeful we all were, but also how hopeless it seemed on some level when, Orange Dirtbag won and all the evil people kind of came in to take over everything. But like, imagine a world where the majority of women, over 50%, because we deserve more than 40%. We deserve over 50%, are hormonally optimized, right? Imagine a world where we are in our power, where we are in that school board, where we are in that Congress seat, we're in that like Senate, we're in that presidential, we are in that presidency seat. Like, imagine if we are now going for that, but we are optimized and radicalized. I think that those are maybe the opponents I want to go against. Bunch of dirtbags. They're not helping. Like, I'd rather go against them than somebody that's pretending to do good, because they're just doing evil straight up. Like, they are making so many mistakes day after day, tearing so many people down, not just women, everybody that's not like a cis Christian white man, basically. It's insanity. So like, what? So I do. I mean, it's maybe I don't know. Like, I think about this all the time, but I take it back every 5 days. I'm like, no, well, maybe somebody, but actually no, like, as the worse they make it for themselves, I think on some level, the quicker they're going to, I hope, this is my hope, this is my vision, as like a psychic Jewish witch in Portland, but like, I hope that like, they're going to get taken down by the wave of power that will happen from women truly being able to radicalize themselves to the truth and to the options they have to give them a better quality of life. Like, if we have the energy to change the world, maybe we will,
Yeah, for sure. So I think for the interest of time, I'm going to say that is the perfect place to stop for today.
Perfect. I tried to give you an out point.
Yeah, but I could talk to you forever, and we will probably continue talking after I hit stop. But I think starting with a documentary and creating a movement is absolutely amazing. And
you think it's possible?
I think so. I think we're on the cusp of something amazing, and we're young enough and vibrant enough and optimized enough that we're going to see it through. So that's spectacular. I'll put in the show notes links to your website, to your socials. If anybody out there is feeling the urge to help sponsor the movie, we'll put the link in there for them to donate, buy merch, all the things. And thank you so much for coming on. I really, now I'm like fired up. I'm a little sweaty. I don't know. Maybe I need to.
I had to turn the fan on too. My fan is on. Look, it's I don't know if you can see it. Can you see it? It's anyway.
Yeah, I see
it. We're still gonna get sweaty. Look, HRT doesn't solve everything, but it does.
Especially when we get fired up.
No, like honestly, that's why I'm making the movie, because I get so worked up when I talk to individual people that like I have to make a movie just to save my it's too much. Like it really takes it out of me emotionally, like, because this is so insane. Like, I don't want to be the bearer of this knowledge. I want to give it to everyone, to share it with everybody. So, so yeah, the fan's on for me too. It's here. Yeah. We're being cooled.
Yes, we are. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. It was such a treat.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Women Mastering Midlife. If something you heard today resonated, I'd be so grateful if you'd share it with a friend who might need a little extra support on her midlife journey. Remember, small changes can make a big difference, and you don't have to navigate this transition alone. We will be back next week with more expert guidance and compassionate conversations to help empower you to master midlife on your terms. Until then, you can find us on Instagram at Women Mastering Midlife, or come connect with me directly at Miss Victoria Byrd. And you're looking for deeper connection and support, be sure to join us in the Women Mastering Midlife community. We'd love to continue the conversation with you there. If you've enjoyed this episode, please rate and review this podcast. It helps us reach more amazing women mastering midlife just like you. You'll find all the links from today's episode and ways to connect in the show notes below. See you next.